Just a note, the magwell is loose, set screw's coming out. I'll have to go grab an Allen key, but the magwell slides on from the rear and then the set screw holds it in place. So, brass ejection is not that, it's consistent in chucking brass pretty far. It throws brass like an AK, but the pattern of where the brass is landing is, you got some brass way the fuck out there, you got some brass real close, so it's a little erratic. Brass ejection on some of my other guns, I can sit here and shoot an array of targets, not move my feet, and the pile of brass is only about a foot. So, throws brass pretty far though. Good extraction. Trigger, even though it doesn't have, it's got wall, or it's got creep into the brake, it does work for a fast trigger when you are running the gun quick. You can run the gun pretty fast. That recoil is something I'm getting used to. I'm getting better at it, breaking the trigger when the dot is crossing the threshold of the target, so you get faster. These mags are hard to load. My thumbs are pretty strong, but mag tension's pretty high in them. Starting to break in a little bit, which is nice. Just put a mag through it. It's getting a little warm, and we took off the magwell just because it fell off. Probably have to lock tight the set screw. All it has, it slides on from the rear, and it's got a little nipple that goes up in there. And it's cool. I like their little G10 grip scales, and then their checkering on the aluminum's real nice. You can see my skin's already coming off on it, so gun grips really well. I am getting bruised from this part of the gun, from how I frame the gun, and that's from that recoil impulse coming straight back. It's a fast gun. Missed half of those though. But I am running the gun at 25 yards. That trigger guard right now, we didn't bring a temperature probe with us, should have, but resting against the dust cover, ow, that's too hot to touch. So right here where your finger would naturally lie against the firearm in the rest position is too hot. And front cocking serrations are too hot. So this gun needs to cool off. Felt recoil, shooting the gun. Muzzle flip is very minimal, but it's not non-existent. The way the recoil impulse comes into your hand, you can feel it. It comes straight back and it hammers your webbing, which is like what you ideally want. The thing that's weird about that is your webbing is really soft. So as it hammers back, like usually when you have a gun that has more muzzle flip, it kind of sits on the bones at the top of your webbing. So when the gun rocks back, it's rocking on bone. So you get more predictable recoil with, like, let's say my Q5 match. It's got a little bit more recoil that goes up and down. The front of the muzzle goes up and down a little bit differently, and it's riding on the bones of my above my webbing, so it sits more predictably. This comes straight back into the soft spot of your webbing. So what I'm finding is my recoil impulse, it's not linear upward. I'm finding it kind of jump around a little bit. So it's not necessarily muzzle rise, but because it's hitting that soft spot of your webbing, it's not consistent. But I have to shoot it more once it cools down. So notable things about this: when I come up and bring the gun up from the holster, I cannot see the dot. The squareness back here, you can see my skin is coming off, and I'm getting beat up here a bit. This almost hooks downward. It almost hooks back towards the user's hand, and when I'm shooting that, when I come up with my normal grip, I have to drive the muzzle down to find the dot. It's not, from my natural point of aim, the dot's up here. It's right at the top of the window. And it's not because of the height of the dot over the bore, it's the ergonomics of the gun. It has a very, it looks like a shadow in terms of ergonomics, but where I'd ideally like is this not be so deep, but it looks like there's a feature here in the gun. That looks like the striker. I think that is, no, that's not the striker. So whatever that feature is right there, we'll have to take it apart and look, but where the alien logo is, where the Laugo logo is, this dips down, and it's that spot in particular that I have to drive the muzzle down to find my dot. It's not natural for me from the other guns that I shoot. But obviously it's a new gun, drive it down a little harder, you find it pretty quick. I've had 2 failure to feeds so far. That is slide stop. Because of how big my hands are, I got pretty big mitts. Because how big my hands are, when I frame the gun up here, this bone on my thumb rests perfectly against the slide stop, and as the gun recoils and my hands move a little bit, I'm getting slide lock. So that's me, not the gun. So I'm gonna have to, from how high up, and you can't help it, that the way this gun is cut here, the way it's designed here, I ride so high up on it that to get the correct grip, I have to sit really high. And when you sit really high, and not to mention I'm driving the gun down, so when I'm driving the gun down, that slide stop's getting pushed down a little bit into my hand. So when I'm pressing that gun, bang, I'm riding that slide stop. Another observation, there is no wall with this gun. It reminds me of the IWI Masada, where the second you start pressing the trigger, it's creep. We'll walk through it together if you want to see it, but you're pressing the trigger, creep, creep, and then it breaks. There's no wall. There's just creep into a break. So it makes, there's creep into a break, which is not bad when you're shooting really, really, really fast. Like you're banging that trigger, having a little bit of creep and keeping spring tension against your finger, and then the break is nice. It's more of like an unpredictable break of the trigger. So in general, it's, in my opinion, that's kind of good for competition shooting. You can run the gun faster. But for those people that love playing reset, well, you don't really. Okay, so it has wall. No, still creep. It's weird. There is a wall on the reset, but then there's creep, 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 break. So there's a little bit of creep in there. And I'm surprised it has as much creep as it does, because it goes wall and then creep. If you stroke the trigger a little bit faster and more deliberate, you pass through that creep quicker. So it's not a bad trigger. I think it's an awesome trigger. Just gonna take some time getting used to compared to other firearms. But that recoil impulse, it's nice. It comes straight back into your hands. It feels literally like it's driving your hands straight back. But because of that, it's bouncing off of the soft spot of the webbing, and I'm noticing more unpredictable recoil. I'm running it faster, my groups start to break apart a little bit. It's a really accurate gun though. And it's so weird not going to the back of the gun to rack it. Like when you put that mag in, you want to rack it off the optic so bad. And even getting in here and finding that fucking rear serrations is almost impossible. You got to rack it from the front. Interesting to do press checks too. I know that they have a chamber witness indicator back there, but it's just different. It's just different. Finding that dot, man. swing and a miss. I'm so focused on getting that gun out of its holster. Ah. I can feel that fucking slide stop wiggling when I draw, like on my hand. I believe I was riding the slide stop, so yep, the mag was just stuck a second ago and I was unable to even move the slide. It wasn't like a tap rack kind of deal. I actually had to strip the mag, put it back in because it was frozen. So I don't know if it's just the timing, riding the slide stop in the wrong time, locked it up. We got a full mag here. Slide is dropped. Having a fully loaded, jammed up mag in here, there's no spring tension. The slide's not pushing the top round into the magazine, which is something that's interesting to note. It loads like with a slide lock. It loads just like a slide locked gun. You know, a lot of people, oh, it's so hard to get my mag in when it's fully loaded. And that's most conventional pistols. This does not have that issue, which is pretty interesting, actually. Pretty cool. Interesting thing is I don't think this makes me better. Like shooting this gun, the recoil is different. But it's not, in my opinion, it's not a good difference for me. My body is so programmed for predictable recoil, where this is like, it's not always predictable. I wish we could like lock a GoPro on the back so you can see the red dot, like see what I see. It's like, it's not like bang, 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 and the dot jumps, you know? It's not like the dot's jumping up like this. It's like all over. It's different.